I'll head on to it now. Yeah, that's exactly where I don't want to be. Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and this is Elite Dangerous. Welcome to the third episode of my Ironman challenge, and I've just found a wanted guy here. I'm going to try and take him out. Hopefully we can do it. Now this is the first voyage of Cmdr Pompeii III, my third attempt at this particular challenge. You can see the rules below. And my goal is to get into a Vulture by following those rules. Now it should be achievable, but I suspect it is going to be quite difficult. Although what type of worthy challenge isn't? Now the rules are pretty strict and I've had quite a bit of feedback on that, so I'm going to try and attempt to explain why those rules are as strict as they are. Now the purpose for the entire rule set to start with is to make the game a little bit more difficult, and it may seem like the rules are stacked against me and that death is pretty much inevitable in the game, but that's certainly not the case. I've set myself a goal, that's to get the Vulture. If I can get into that ship while following the goals, then I will set myself a new goal and revise the rules somewhat for a new challenge. Of course, the rules themselves do seem pretty strict, and the rule that seemed to get the most commentary is rule number 1, where I cannot repair my ship. Now there's a very specific reason for that rule, and I've been playing Elite for over a year now. When I create a new save like this one, I can generally get myself out of a Sidewinder and into a Viper with about 1 hour of play, and a few more hours of play after that, and I can fairly easily find myself in a Cobra, and I can usually do that without losing a ship at all. Once you know what you're doing and where you're going, getting yourself into a ship like that really isn't that difficult, and I just wanted to make things a little bit more difficult. And rule number 1, where I'm not allowed to repair my ship, is effectively aimed at piloting a Sidewinder or an Eagle, where I'm not allowed to repair them. And that just increases the odds on the challenge, making it a little bit more difficult for me to get out of the Sidewinder in the first place. Something I can do without pretty much breaking a sweat usually. But the rules certainly seem to have shaken things up, because this is now my third attempt, so we'll have to see how it goes. You may have noticed I've also revised some of the other rules, so there's no longer 10 rules, and that's just to make things a little bit more simpler and straightforward. And it looks like we got the asp here and made ourselves a nice chunk of money on the first outing. Nice. Well, let's head back then and hand in that bounty voucher. Here we are then at Hartsfield's plant, and I'm going to hand in that bounty voucher and then check the bulletin board to see if there's any work here I can take. So still under 1,000 credits here, but that is about to jump up significantly once I hand in this bounty voucher. I'm aiming to buy myself an Eagle, as I think they're pretty good combat ships. Although I would like to get a Viper and probably will get one eventually. They are pretty expensive, and considering the rule set, it's going to be a little bit tight to get there. For the price of a Viper, I can probably buy an Eagle and outfit it fairly well, so that is the path I'm going to take. Now I did want to take a look at a job here, but it turns out the jobs that are here aren't actually available to me, so at this point I decided to move on to the next station and have a look to see if there was any jobs there. So a quick trip to Torn Orbital then. Funny that this is the Gold Mafia. That's the faction the asp belonged to then I destroyed at the start. So what are we going to have here? You know, you've seen me start off a few times now on this particular series. Usually I try and head off into combat and get a bounty voucher or something, as that gives quite a boost of money fairly early on. How do you tend to start out on new saves? What would you suggest I try? Disabling rebel transmissions in Econir. That was the mission I decided to accept. Not bad work, although of course it is considered a illegal activity. But that's not a problem for our Cmdr Pompeii III. And that one mission I think was enough for now. It was off to Econir then for our intrepid hero. He was feeling fairly confident at this point with 51,000 credits in the bank, although I couldn't help remembering the fate of Cmdr Pompeii III, who died without getting to spend any of his money. Now, I was pretty sure that things were going to play out a little bit different for this guy, at least that was a hope. Fortunately, Econir was only one short jump away, and although the jump range of the Sidewinder is quite short, it was still well within range. So one short trip later to Econir, and we find ourselves in an unidentified signal source. And of course it is the guy telling us that they will buy the data from us instead of the original mission giver. But I didn't want to have any of that. I wanted to stick to the person who originally gave me the mission. But in either event, it meant that I had to spend a bit more time flying around looking for that weak signal source in order to collect the rebel transmissions. Always tempting to shoot these guys, but I let him go. After all, I don't want a bounty on my head. Fortunately, the weak signal source wasn't too far away, so we were that much closer to completing a relatively simple mission. The only downside to these sort of missions is that they pay fairly poorly, and at this point I'd much rather be trying to collect bounties, as they're far higher paying, meaning this guy would be able to get out of this sidewinder that much quicker. But nonetheless, I was there to collect the rebel transmissions, and that was exactly what I was going to do. I've only ever once actually been caught for doing these missions. They are illegal, as the mission description says, and if you get scanned by authority vessels, you will get a pretty huge fine. Fortunately, I'll be taking this one back to an outpost where there isn't any authority vessel, so unless I get interdicted, there's nothing to worry about in that regards. So really it's just a case of collecting the cargo here without making a daft mistake and smashing it to pieces. There is 2 rebel transmissions here, and I wasn't sure whether I needed to take both. As far as I was aware, I only actually needed one, but I decided to play it safe and take both of them just in case. As you know, I spend a whole lot of time exploring in my other series, and there's not a whole lot of opportunity to cargo scoop things out that far from deep space. So even simple missions like this can be of interest to a lone explorer when he returns back to civilized space. So at this point we had the cargo, and it was time to head back. And yes, as I noted there, it was only 1 cargo unit I needed for the particular mission. Fair enough. On the way back to Torn Orbital, I was wondering whether to collect a bunch of new missions or simply head out and do some more combat. Now, missions do add some variety and they spice things up a little bit, especially if you take the ones that are a little bit more difficult, that perhaps are combat orientated or require you to do an illegal activity. And I was inclined to take a few more missions, even though they were fairly low paying. Of course, even whilst doing the missions, it would be possible to drop in on USS's and look for some high profile targets, so I was thinking that was likely to be my course of action. This Ironman series is fairly interesting to record actually, because what I do is broadcast the entire session via live stream on Twitch. The gameplay you're seeing here actually represents between 2 and 3 hours worth of footage, so essentially what I do is take that footage and edit it together into an episode like this and do a fresh commentary, and filming in this way ensures that all the rules for the challenge are actually met, because obviously anyone can go and have a look at the video archive and watch the entire play session, meaning that I can't simply edit out any mistakes. Not that I would, of course, but a challenge like this probably should be well documented. So there we go, the mission was handed in and my reputation went up a little bit. So I went ahead and decided to take a whole bunch of missions this time. The bulletin board was actually full of jobs, which makes a change. Sometimes it can be a little bit sparse, so seeing it this full was actually quite nice. So here we go, 3 missions and 2 of them combat orientated. One of them was going to take me back to Ekenir again, and I knew where that was, so that was the first one I decided to do. The other mission was simply to steal some goods. Toxic waste, I believe. So once again back to Ekenir. What are we going to find there? Who is going to be in these missions? Are we going to be able to successfully defeat them? After all, I'm only in a lowly sidewinder here with mere pea shooters. What was going to happen? As I've said, I was quite confident in Cmdr Pompeii III's abilities in this particular instance, so I think we were good. But you never know. I've been known to make a few daft mistakes, but as long as I didn't crash into an outpost here, I think things were looking good. In search of the mission targets, I was bound to stop into every single USS I could find here in Ekenir, and this first USS wasn't a particular target for the mission, but the guy was wanted, so he was going to go down, particularly that he was flying around in a Sidewinder without any shields. Now the Federal forces were also here, and I'm sure they were going to start firing at any moment, but I wanted to get in there first. Already the guy was down to 84% hull with just a few fires of my pea shooters here, but nevertheless I wanted to get him and get the bounty, no matter how small it was going to be. Now surprisingly, the payouts for Sidewinders can sometimes be quite high, can't they? Although they're usually just around a few thousand credits, on occasion they can be as much as 10 or 15,000. Although I guess that's quite rare for the Sidewinders that fly around without shields. This one was being a little bit elusive. He's flying quite close to me, and the AI was a pretty good pilot, but he was no match for my Sidewinder's shields and my flying abilities. Quite possibly I'd get more cash for this single Sidewinder than I would for the other missions. That's if he was going to go down, but he wasn't, because he jumped away, even though I didn't notice the surge detected message. Not to worry. Once again I was off in search for another USS, and this time maybe it would be the mission guy, or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe though it could be something of even greater value and opportunity. 2 contacts, 3 contacts, with the no, 4 contacts. Were these going to be the guys for my mission? Federal Security Services, it seemed unlikely at that point. An Anaconda, a big target. What was it going to say? He was wanted, and well, I didn't really hesitate. I decided this is too big of opportunity to pass up, and not being one to pass up on opportunities, I waited a little bit for the Federals to engage, and then I decided to engage the target myself. I had it very much in mind at this point of my previous failures in the last 2 episodes of this challenge, and I didn't want to have a 3rd episode ending with me exploding, because that would seem a little bit ridiculous. But you know, what was you going to do? An Anaconda like this would be worth a huge amount of money and would get me into a new ship very, very quickly. Was it worth the risk? Well, I only had 51,000 in the bank. I'd been playing a couple of hours at this point, and failing would prevent me from getting to the next step of the challenge, but it would also get me a significant boost if I succeeded here. And I knew I was pretty safe all the time. The Anaconda didn't concentrate its fire on me, although for a moment there it did start turning its guns at me, taking down a ring of my shields very quickly. Now, aside from the risk to my own ships during battles like this with very large and very hard targets, one of the other problems is they can be very long and protracted battles, largely because of the small amount of damage I'm actually able to deal myself here. But the Anaconda's hull is already down to 69%, so it was looking quite good. But I just wished he would keep firing at me. I was trying to keep my distance. I was hoping he would aim at the other targets, but every so often he'd just turn all his guns on me and start stripping away my shields. But past experience told me that power management was key, so I kept switching between systems and weapons as and when I needed to. Didn't worry too much about engine, because usually the guy stayed in range, so that generally wasn't a problem. And so the dance went, us flying around each other, me taking pot shots at him occasionally turning his weapons against me, until I got a little bit too close and he opened up a full volley on me, continuing to shoot, stripping away my shields and taking down my hull at a very rapid pace. At this point I thought I might be in for it, so I attempted to boost, but of course my engine capacitor wasn't fully charged. It took a little while. Fortunately for me, I guess, the Federals still continued to fire on the Anaconda, and I did manage to get out of range for it, even if only for a little while. But shields down and down to 70% hull, and the hull on the Sidewinder of course is paper thin. Nevertheless, at this point I was completely determined to try and take him out. And in the back of my mind I knew how ridiculous it would look if I failed for the 3rd time consecutively on this challenge. I was also starting to consider that perhaps I should have at least upgraded my power distributor enabling me to charge my weapons and shields a little bit faster. But that was something I hadn't done, and he just kept firing in my direction every so often, just stripping a little bit of my hull down here and there. Another volley like the previous one, and chances were I'd be completely finished. Without shields, my hull would be stripped down very, very fast. Although he was down to 4%, so the odds were perhaps even. If I lost this bout, it'd be another 50,000 down the drain. Not to mention another Cmdr Pompeii in the grave. But if I did succeed, it would be a huge reward here, or at least potentially. Sometimes these anacondas don't pay out much. What a disappointment that would have been. And did you see how quickly my shields were stripped away for the second time there? And look at that, 160,000 credits, bringing me up to 210,000 credits in total. An absolute awesome start for Cmdr Pompeii III. And this meant, barring me making any form of stupid action, I would at last get myself into the next step toward the goal of owning a Vulture. So I wanted to stay in this system to claim the bounty, so I headed to Moray Vision. 160,000 credits. Nice start. Next job then was to at last go by that eagle, and it looked like Cmdr Pompeii had survived his first episode. Cleve Harbour wasn't too far away, and it did have a shipyard, although of course I didn't know what ships it would sell. Fortunately it did have that Sidewinder in stock. I knew it would be nice to get out of this tattered Sidewinder. It's pretty beat up at this point. The question was though, how long could I make an eagle last in order to get me into a Viper? Now, a tip here for people who are still in their Sidewinders and actually haven't got out of it yet. When you come to buy your next ship, you'll be asked if you want to exchange a ship. Don't exchange it, because the ship itself is valued at 0. If it's a starter Sidewinder, the one you're actually given when you start the game, it's valued at 0. So if you try and exchange it, you'll get nothing back. And if you want a Sidewinder at a later date, it's actually going to cost you money to purchase it. So you might as well just keep the Sidewinder and purchase your new ship. Of course, if you do have modules in the ship, do sell them. If they're upgraded modules, that is, because the modules that come with the ship are also valued at 0. They're merely loaned. So that is exactly what I was going to do. Buy the new ship and store my current ship. Pretty huge step on this challenge then, to actually get out of the first ship and into the second ship. And there we have it, one shiny new eagle. And we will have a look at how I outfit that in the next episode. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time. This has been Obsidian Ant, signing off.